This tablecloth is actually really wrinkled.
Well, the funniest
and I'm
part
not
about
going
that,
to iron it.
The funniest part is she like came back to the office last night to get this thing, to bring it home, to get rid of the wrinkles, and she washed it and dried it, but there were still wrinkles. So what would most people do? They would iron it, right? After all that effort. Not Jen. She was like, the wrinkles are gonna stay. Because like, I will drive to the office and back, and I will wash it, and I will dry it, but that's where it ends. No ironing.
It literally never occurred to me. When was the last time you saw me use an iron?
I don't know if I ever have.
It is Jen Fulweiler, stand-up comic and mom of 6, here with the little Joeschooling series that we're doing based on my husband's very unique philosophy of education. If you missed the first video, you can look that up, but here's the quick summary. My husband Joe here grew up poor. He was raised by a single mother. He ended up going to college at Yale, graduating in 3 years with honors, going to Columbia Law School, Stanford Business School, and he studied in the Master's Computer Science program while he was at Stanford, because why not? He's very modest. I'm making him very uncomfortable by saying this, but you need to know his background in order to understand why he has interesting thoughts on education. My background is, I did none of that, and I went to the University of Texas, and now I tell jokes on stage when we're able to do comedy tours. So in this video, Joe, in this video, I would like to talk about being a mission-driven family, because that is something that your mom just did such a great job of with you, and I'd never really seen that done until I had seen the model that your mom put forth. And now we do that with our family, with our 6 kids. We try to be pretty mission-driven people. And whenever I tell my friends about this, whenever I talk to Instagram about this, people always find that very interesting. They say, well, what do you, I mean, as a family, aren't we just kind of living life and hanging out? Like what would that even look like? I don't know where to start. That is what this video is about. Sound good?
Sounds great.
You're just here along for the ride. All right.
I'm like your prop.
Yeah, you are. So how much of a sense of mission did you grow up with? Did your mom instill in you?
Yeah, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 100, 100. I mean, there was a very clear mission. Everything was sort of oriented around that.
And I think one of the important things to look at from your story is that your mom's mission was very simple. It was very, very simple. What was your mom's mission?
It was to get us out of poverty and powerlessness.
Yeah.
As we talked about on the previous.
Yeah, again, you can look up we went into all the details about that. But so your mom had, she didn't take any courses about vision setting. She didn't have a life coach she didn't go see motivational speakers. So for her, because she came from generational poverty, she was like a dog with a bone. She was fixated on this idea that this cycle that has been in my family for generations of powerlessness and of poverty, it ends here. Very, very simple vision. Now, for most people listening, and this is true for us, they're not coming from circumstances that are that dire. And so I think that's how a lot of people they're blessed, they're fortunate, they live comfortable lives. It's easy to kind of just drift through day to day. You take the kids to soccer, you have them play violin because that's what everyone at the school is doing. You get them in band, you get them in math club, and then and you just sort of get in the system. And I think you have to be intentional if you're going to set a vision for your family, right?
You do have to be intentional. Absolutely. You've got to be clear on what the vision is, and you've got to make trade-offs, and you've got to give up other things to get the things that you want. I do think you might be surprised at how many people do have kind of dire circumstances, though, at least at some point in their lives. It's kind of I used to do bankruptcy law, and it's shocking how many middle-class families end up, needing to file bankruptcy at some point. So I think a lot of people might be able to relate to it better than you think.
That's okay. It's worth jumping in on this. I did think that was interesting that sometimes when we would drive through a fancy neighborhood, see a really fancy house or a really fancy car, I'd say, wow, their lives have worked out so much better than ours. I remember we were starting a business, everything was so hard. And you always said, based on your experience doing bankruptcy law, you never know what's going on behind the scenes with your neighbor. Like, you never know if the fancy car is about to be repossessed and they're way overextended on their house. So that's an aside, but I do think it's worth noting. Don't assume that everyone else has it all figured out and their lives are perfect, because that's not the reality, right?
Yeah. I one time did some numbers, and I'm not going to do them now. I know you don't want me to go down in the weeds too much here, but I one time looked at the number of bankruptcy filings and did a cumulative on that, and looked at numbers of people in the population and so forth. And long story short, by my calculations, if you walk down the street in any average suburban neighborhood, about every fourth house either has or is or will file bankruptcy at some point.
Wow, and that's just bankruptcy. That's not even debt. If you were to look around your neighborhood at who's in debt, who's got the credit card bill that they're like,
there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people that should file bankruptcy that don't, and Dave Ramsey talks about that a lot, and I disagree with most of it, almost everything he says about, at least when it comes to bankruptcy. There's a lot of distress out there.
And by the way, he doesn't do. Sometimes he's said that before, and everyone's like, he's trying to get business for his bankruptcy. He doesn't practice bankruptcy law anymore.
I haven't practiced bankruptcy in 5 years.
He has no skin in that game. But that's his opinion. But the point is, what I want everyone to take away is, especially as we record this, times are pretty hard right now for a lot of people, and just know whether we're talking about education or debt or anything else going on in your life. I promise you that the people who you live around have way bigger problems than you think, and their lives are not as put together as you think. And that's freeing, because we're all kind of a mess, when you really get into the behind the scenes. So to get back to setting a vision, one of the things you said that I think is really powerful is everything in life is a trade-off. You didn't say that, but I'm putting words in your mouth. Everything in life is a trade-off. I mean, us choosing to do this video right now, we could be drinking beer on the back deck, or we could be doing something that makes money, unlike this video. We could be doing a lot of other things with our time. So this is an intentional choice of how we use our time. And so when people ask me, they say, Jen, you talk about the vision setting with your family, we've never done that. What are you talking about? I would say, and see if you agree with this, Joe, that essentially it's about being awesome at making trade-offs. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that's certainly true, but I think it's also about recognizing what you really like to do. Are you more of an outdoorsy person versus an academically oriented person? Or, and there are a bunch of different, things to talk about there, but just really understanding what you like to do and how you want to contribute to the world, and then what you're actually good at, because you may love playing, soccer, but you may be terrible at it. So that's not going to be your life's mission, understanding your skill sets, understanding your desires, and how you'd like to contribute to the world.
Oh, I wish someone had written a book on that. I actually didn't plan to do this, but I'm literally using this to keep.
Wait, if you didn't plan to do it, then why was it sitting right?
Well, because I'm using it to keep the tablecloth down, because it's wrinkled. Okay. This tablecloth is actually really wrinkled.
The funniest
and I'm
part
not
about
going
that,
to iron it.
The funniest part is she came back to the office last night to get this thing, to bring it home, to get rid of the wrinkles, and she washed it and dried it, but there were still wrinkles. So what would most people do? They would iron it, right? After all that effort. Not Jen. She was like, the wrinkles are gonna stay. Because I will drive to the office and back, and I will wash it, and I will dry it, but that's where it ends. No ironing.
It literally never occurred to me. When was the last time you saw me use an iron?
I don't know if I ever have. Really? Maybe in a hotel once before you were going on air or something. But the thing is to iron this, even just the middle part of it would take 5 minutes. It would have taken less time than washing and drying it. I don't know if you know how irons work, actually. Like, they're really not that hard to operate.
No, it is because then I'd be like melting the plastic on this table if I ironed it.
You wouldn't iron it on here. You'd iron it on an
Well,
ironing board.
I'm going to get on the whole ironing board.
would have
Like, I have a life to live.
The ironing board's right by the dryer. It's
No,
really
I know,
easy.
but it's like, it makes that noise when you... Very sensitive to noise.
You
I
are
literally
sensitive to
just
noise.
said that. I swear I didn't plan to plug this book, but Joe was talking about connecting with, like, what is your destiny? What are you meant to contribute to the world? It might be different than your day job. I wrote a book about that. And I'm actually not trying to sell books that we've given up on that. Get it at your library. I don't care, but I have a book on it. And I'm using it to fix this tablecloth. And now I just threw it on the floor. My publisher loves me. Like, they're very happy to be working with me. So, okay. Where were we?
Do you know why she just said that? She said that her publisher loves her. She's joking because she doesn't care about selling books anymore. What she cares about is being funny on videos that make no money. That's what the life is about now.
It's about being mission driven.
Yes.
Like, that's my mission.
That's true. This is a very mission driven thing.
To make no money. If there's money involved, I'm like, I don't want it. I want to put stuff on YouTube for free where I don't even have any subscribers. Because publishing makes money. So like, I don't want any part of that anymore. We're done. But mission driven. Trade-offs. Okay, to take it back to trade-offs. Here's what I see a lot of people do. I saw this a lot when I was growing up. You would get it, your parents would get you involved in all of these activities and sports, and you'd have to do ballet and soccer and whatever else sports, and then you'd have to be in this club and that club. And it was just because we were on a treadmill. There was no goal-orientedness. Like, for example, Joe's mom, who we call Yaya would say, look, you've got to be involved in this club and this sport, or pick a club, because we have to break this cycle of poverty. We need to, we just have things that we are trying to do in our lives here. Yeah, so it was mission driven. Whereas a lot of us, as kids, we were stuck in these activities and these sports, and it took a lot of time out of our lives. Time that we could have been doing other things, and no parents ever thought about the trade-offs of that, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would agree. And my mom didn't even know that you needed to be in clubs and sports to do a good college application. She didn't understand any of that. All she said, it was one goal, and that was like, go to a top school. That was it.
Yeah, and so she's like, figure out the details.
Right, which I think is powerful because it allows me to figure out what the right trade-offs are. I mean, you can't have 10 goals, right? You can, but then you're not going to accomplish any of them.
Right.
But if you have one goal and you keep focused on that.
That's a great point. And so what we learn from that is it's way more important to have a vision, even if it's unrealistic. His mother's vision was totally unrealistic. You can't take a kid who comes from generational poverty, raised by a single mother who has no connections, no influence, doesn't know anything about how to do this. You can't have that kid go to Yale and Columbia and Stanford, but she didn't see any of those details. She had the vision. She had none of the details, but just the vision. And you know what? A lot of times, that's enough. Whereas a lot of us, and I did until I met him, I did this, we flip it. We know the details. We kind of ape what we see other people doing. Like, all of my friends' kids are in violin lessons. So, okay, I guess I have to get my kids in violin lessons. I don't know why. It's just what we do. And it ends up putting you and your kids in a life where you are not making awesome trade-offs. And to give you a specific example, I know a family that they're super into baseball, and in fact, they think a couple of their kids, they might even make it to the minor or even the major leagues. So it's baseball all the time. They're so booked up with baseball stuff. And that's great for them because they are mission driven. They say, we think we have some rare talent here. We'd like to develop that. So they don't have that much time to have family dinners. They're not doing a lot of family vacation stuff. Trade-offs. That they're not able to do a lot of the things that, say, our family might do because they have that mission. But it all works because they are being awesome about their trade-offs. Whereas for us, we had our kids in some activities. There's like a lot of stories we could tell of us having our kids in activities that were neither a fit for the children or for the parents. And early on in parenting, I just felt like we had to do it. And one day I looked around and said, these girls are in this dance class And it is taking up a lot of our time, my time and their time, and they don't even like it. They're not enjoying it. They don't want to be dancers. This isn't getting us anywhere. But what it does mean is we're not having family dinners. We're not hanging out on the back porch and chatting. So this is taking away, it's costing us something. It's costing us time that we could just be doing nothing as a family, which is valuable. And what are we getting for it? Nothing. An activity that they're not really even thriving in. Mm-hmm. And you saw that too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the other thing that occurs to me is, obviously faith comes first. If you're doing so much that you can never go to church on Sunday, or you're not making it to church every Sunday even, you're probably doing too much. You probably need to just scale back. And if you're never having dinner with your family, you're probably doing too much. Now, the baseball, I know who you're talking about, and the baseball people, like, they do those things as a family. So I wouldn't even say it's detracting from their family life, because their kids are in what they call select teams, travel teams. They actually travel almost every weekend together as a family, and so they get actually great family time.
It just looks different than sitting around at home around the kitchen table.
But I do want to clarify also, when in my situation with my mom, and education was always the goal, but we also went to church on Sundays, and that was the higher goal. The only family we had was each other, really, and so the bond between us, getting along well, obviously would come before grades. She was not going to sacrifice her relationship with me for me to get better grades. So, I mean, and I've seen parents that have done exactly that by just,
I saw that a lot.
terrorizing their children, or humiliating them or criticizing them to the point where their relationship is impacted, and that's not worth it, I mean, for better grades. So, there is a hierarchy, for us, faith and family. And then it's just sort of everything else. It's just sort of life. And so when we talk about making trade-offs, we're talking about in the life bucket.
Right. So,
and this is all clear in the book that you're not going to buy, but
right. And don't.
You're right.
Just find a pirated version.
Right.
I'm actively trying not to. Another thing.
You might be breaching your contract right now. Don't say that.
No, okay, yeah, actually, no, buy 10 copies. See, now I'll make up for it. New viewers might not know, I actually had a stable job as a talk radio host at SiriusXM, and I quit that right at the beginning of the pandemic. So that's right. Lots of jokes about Jen kind of running away from money in this season of life. Okay, so I think people listening to this are like, okay, I'm tracking with you, but how practically right now, tonight, what do I do to start being a more mission-driven family so that we can start making awesome trade-offs where we feel like we're really thriving as a family? And I think it starts by getting together with your spouse, or if you're a single parent, maybe just getting together with some other single parent friends. I think it does help to have someone else to bounce ideas off of, and just do 30,000-foot view, big picture. Get a pen and paper, or cocktail napkins, whatever you want, and just think like big picture. What do you want out of life? And if your kids are still in the home, when they are adults, what do you want that to look like? How often would you like to talk to them? What would you like their lives to look like? Right? Do you think that's a good place to start? Because your mom did that.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. And you want to make sure you're coming from a place of service and like how you can do something good for the world. Because if your answer to that question, what do I want out of life, is something gluttonous or lustful, or you just want to travel all the time, or that's not it. It's got to be something more like where you're giving back. This is, again, it's all covered in the book.
We didn't mean to turn this into.
I don't know how we got on this, but yeah. I would say that's a great way to start.
Well, okay, here, one thing
and talk to your kids about what they want. I mean, and be cognizant of how you're spending your time now, because you might need to change,
Okay, so to distill this, I would start with it. I think one way to put what we just said into a clear box is, whether you know this or not, the only thing that is really going to matter to you at the end of your days, in the big picture of your life, is your relationships. A lot of people don't clue into this until they're like 50 or 60 or 70. So if you are younger than 50, get this in your head now, because as we see our own lives play out, the lives of people we care about. Again, Joe knows people that he knows from Yale and from Stanford and Columbia. They are at the height of success. They are worth maybe even into the billions of dollars. And so we have a lot of data about what really makes people happy and what doesn't. And the only thing that really matters at the end of the day is your relationships. We're Catholic, so we would say your relationship with God, and then, of course, your relationship with your loved ones, with lifelong friends, with your parents, with your kids, siblings, nieces, nephews, that sort of thing. So when you start this vision setting thing, maybe you have a dream of owning a beautiful home and you want your kids to have beautiful homes. That's fine. You can get to that. But start with what you want your relationships to look like. What do you want your faith life to look like? As your kids get older, when your kids are 20, 30, 40, 50, what do you want Thanksgiving to look like? Start there with your vision setting, right? Mm-hmm. And that's it. You know, we've talked a lot in this video, in the first video, which you can also look up, which we went into Joe's background. We've talked a lot about how much his mom emphasized education, getting out of poverty, that sort of thing. But one of the things she also did, and I think this was more implicit, I don't know if she quite spelled this out as much, but there was definitely an implication that he and she would always be close, and that he would probably get married and have children, and that she would be close to those children. And isn't there a story of like one time when you were mad at your mom when you were a little kid? Mm-hmm. What's that?
Yeah. She would always talk about her precious grandchildren.
Like when you were little?
Yeah, when I was little. And so for some reason I was mad about something, and I said, well, you're not going to get to see your precious grandchildren.
And how old were you?
I don't even know, maybe 10.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
You know.
So even though she didn't spell that out quite as much, she raised him with the assumption family is great, and if there's any way possible, get married and have kids. And she was like, I'm going to be part of those kids' lives. I am. This is a top priority. And so that did inform a lot of your decisions. Like at one point, you moved back to Texas, and I don't know if you even, to give you a background, he had been working as an attorney doing mergers and acquisitions at one of the really big, impressive firms in New York City. I mean, I know you're very humble, but it was an impressive job, right?
It was.
Okay. I'm amazed I got him to say that. It was a very impressive job. And I don't know if you articulated this at the time you made that decision, but one of the reasons you moved back to Texas was just that pull of the values and the vision that your mother had instilled you with, you know, that just to be around friends and around her, and that's where your home base was.
Yeah, that was definitely a big part of it. I mean, culturally, I also just found people to be generally friendlier. But I like New York too. I mean, it's kind of like our second home.
Yeah. So...
But can I say one other thing? One other thing my mom always did is she always had my back. You know, if I had conflicts with teachers, I mean, she would listen to them and she would tell me if I was in error, but she came into things with the assumption that I was in the right, and she was on my team very clearly in everything throughout life. And that was also kind of a demonstration of the importance kind of the hierarchy, right? Like family kind of comes before all the worldly stuff. She wasn't going to side with my teachers just to get me a better grade, because she understood that her relationship with me was more important than getting a better grade. Does that make sense?
And I think that's part of the whole vision setting idea, is that it's kind of implied that if you're setting a vision, it is for a cohesive group of people to do together. And that's another thing. Being a child of the 80s and 90s, I really think that is when American culture reached a height of individualism. And so I think a lot of us Gen Xers, we didn't see our families as teams. It was like we were individuals. And by the way, my mom sees this. I had a wonderful childhood. I'm talking more about cultural forces. We kind of saw ourselves as individuals who were living these very disparate individual lives who just so happened to be under the same roof. And that is not how your mom saw things.
Yeah, it was more team-oriented than that.
And so I think that's one of the most important things that you, a mom or a dad who's watching this, is the first shift that needs to happen is start to see your family as a team. That's yet another thing in my book that I'm not selling. Is I talk about that people say, Jen, you did stand-up comedy. I'm doing stand-up comedy. We self-produced this huge tour, a theater tour all across the country. We brought the kids with us, and people would always say, well, as a homeschooling mom of 6, like, how can you do that? And my answer was always, I am not doing it. We did that. I actually, my kids helped me work out some of my material. I mean, they would be doing sound check. I'd be like, I tell my daughter, who was like, I don't know, 11 or 12 at the time, I'd be like, Lucy, can you do sound check? Because I got to go back there. Like the stagehands need to know where to put the stuff. So I'd have my kids doing the sound check.
Well, I remember, how old was our oldest at the time? 12?
13, I think, when we did the
So
tour.
he brought his laptop and headphones, and he would go find the sound system and get it working.
Yeah.
So he did that in like 4 or 5 different parish halls, and he got pretty good at it by the end. So yeah, you had like a 13-year-old doing that, and then like a 10-year-old on the stage making the same check, 1, 2, 3, you know.
Right, and then they were able to kind of develop their talents. But the point is, all of that was an extension of seeing our family as a team. And before you even do any of this vision setting, you need to change your mindset to think of your family as a team. And a lot of things get clarified and become easy from there. So to finish this up, I would say, 1, start by seeing your family as your team. 2, do your vision setting exercise where you say, what do we want our lives to look like? Starting with our relationships, relationship with God, relationship with family. What do you want now? What do you want out of life in the long term? And then from there, I would say all of the other details, I mean, they matter, but not quite as much as those, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And this can be a fun date night activity. You can tell that we are intense people. When we like go to date night dinners, we bring laptops and pens and paper. Like this is what we talk about in our spare time, like for fun, right? We have a running joke. Yeah. We said the other day, we said, let's try to talk and not have a super intense and analytical conversation. And we failed, right?
Every time, yeah.
It was like 2 hours later, we were deep in some really intense analysis.
Just like exhausted.
Right, we exhaust ourselves. We literally do. So, but for some people for whom that doesn't come naturally, plan a date night, in-home date night, and just say, we are going to carve out some time. We're going to get a sheet of paper and a pen. We are going to write out what we want out of life, our vision for what, as a team, our family will look like. And then after we have that, we put it up somewhere, have it emailed to yourself, like snooze it and have it emailed to you every day. Put it somewhere where you will see it. And always ask, are the trade-offs that I am making today with my kids' education or with anything in life, with what activities they're in, with what we're doing for our jobs. Are we going to move to take a bigger job or take a different job? All of that. Hold it up to your vision statement sheet and say, the trade-off that I am being asked to make today, which choice gets me closer to what is written on our vision statement? Is that right? Is that fair?
Sounds good.
All right, so that is it for this video. Again, we're doing quite a few in the series. Look me up on Instagram. Jennifer Fulweiler is my handle over there. You can look up Joe Fulweiler on Instagram. He doesn't know how to use Instagram. We'll go on vacation and he'll seriously sit there and post like 40 pictures, just one after another on Instagram. It's an event when Joe gets on Instagram. So you may or may not want to follow him, and we'll be back soon with another video.